I'm attorney Michael Tyler, bringing you guests and information to help you get legal. Hello, and welcome to another installment of Get Legal with Attorney Tyler. I'm your host, Michael Tyler. Before we get into today's subject matter, I would like to first discuss something that has been a little bit of a bugaboo in my practice as of late, and that is clients being injured in accidents, but there not being enough insurance available to make them whole. The main thing that we try to do in injury work is to try to make the client whole, which means getting them the necessary medical treatment to fix whatever ills that they were experienced with as a result of the accident. But at the same time, we want to try to put cash in their pocket to help compensate them for the tediousness and the unnecessariness of the accident. Well, the problem that we have is, as of late, it appears that more individuals are experiencing some significant injuries. And with that, it's taking quite a bit of insurance in order to try to make them whole. What I mean by that is, generally in Louisiana, a driver or operator of a motor vehicle must be covered by the state minimum limits of coverage. That is the 15, 30, 25 coverage, meaning $15,000 for one individual bodily injury, $30,000 for the entire accident with one individual getting up to $15,000, and then $25,000 for property damage. Yes, if you paid attention to what I said, your car, your property, is valued more than the human body, with the property being $25,000 and the body being $15,000. The issue comes when a client has significant injuries. Let's say client is injured in a motor vehicle accident, and the at-fault party is insured with the state minimum limits, which means $15,000 is at play. Well, if the client has to get an MRI, let's say something's wrong with their cervical spine, which is the neck, and that requires specialist treatment from either an orthopedic surgeon or a neurologist, well, the value of the case definitely has gone up and exceeded the $15,000 at-fault policy. Well, now as attorneys, we have to try to find a way to maximize that value to make sure that the medical treatment is paid for and that the client can put some money in their pocket. As attorneys, we don't necessarily look at what we will end up with in the end. Our focus is on the client. And so with that, one of the main ways that we have to try to get the client more money is through something called uninsured and underinsured motorists. This is something that hopefully the client has on their insurance policy. However, usually a lot of clients don't. For some reason, they decide to decline that coverage and they sign over the document with their insurance company declining that coverage, which prevents them from having underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage. That means then that if they are injured in an accident and the at-fault only has $15,000 worth of insurance, well then we're only working with $15,000 of insurance. Now, of course, the client will sit down with us and they'll want to sue the other party, but suing the other party doesn't mean that we're going to get over that $15,000. Oftentimes that comes down to whether or not the client has whether or not the at-fault has sufficient assets in order to satisfy any type of judgment or any type of amounts over the $15,000. I can tell you right now, in my multiple years of practice, that usually is not the case. In all of the cases that I've had, I believe I was only able to get an excess of the 15 from an at-fault party one time, and that was because that person had a business outside of the insurance policy, which allowed us to get more money. So I say all that to say that for those of you out there who are operating a motor vehicle, if you are insured by one of the various companies that provide motor vehicle insurance coverage, please check your policy to see if you have uninsured motorists or underinsured motorist coverage. It can be very important and almost vital to an extent that you do have that, because most of the drivers on the road these days only have minimum limits coverage. And if you are injured and you need specialty care, that $15,000 will never be adequate enough to make you whole after the accident. So please sit down with whoever you acquired your insurance from to make sure, number one, that you have sufficient enough coverage these days, because I'm gonna tell you right now, minimum limits really doesn't cut it these days. You can possibly subject it to what we call an excess, which does not help your pockets and which may cause you to have to file bankruptcy. So check with the person who you acquired your insurance from to make sure you have adequate coverage, and try to get underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage is not that expensive, and the small cost per month for that insurance can definitely benefit you in the long run. That is my take on insurance from a motor vehicle standpoint today. However, moving forward in this particular program, we are going to be talking about insurance, but more so life insurance. And joining me today to talk about that is Mr. Thomas Dixon of the Acadian Insurance Group. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
So tell us, Thomas, how long have you been in the insurance game overall?
It's been a little bit over a year, almost 2 years now I've been selling life insurance.
Okay. And what made you focus on life insurance?
Well, a little backup, I worked for Cox Communications locally for 13 years,
Okay.
and I've met a lot of people, and my senior citizen clients were the ones who I felt the bond with the most. So
Okay.
I left Cox and started doing life insurance. I want to focus on those senior citizens who may have gotten some bad information with life insurance and just help them out as best as I could.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Now, when I think of life insurance, and of course I am covered under life insurance, I initially started off with what's termed a whole policy, and I converted that to a term policy.
Okay.
For those out there watching, can you please explain to us what a whole and a term is, and what's the difference between the two?
Okay, most insurance agents use this particular type of analogy. Term life insurance is short for terminating insurance. It's almost like renting a house. The insurance is going to last for 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. After those years are up, you have to renew the term. But if you renew it in 20 years, you're going to be charged the price that's 20 years older. That's the downside. The upside is you can get a larger policy with term insurance because it's less expensive.
Okay.
Whole life is like buying a house. You're going to pay a lot more money, but you're going to build equity into the policy. We call that cash value. The price does not change. If you're paying $50 at age 30, you're going to be paying $50 a month at age 60 because you're locked in at that price. And if the cash value builds up, you have an opportunity to take a loan out against that. I don't recommend that,
Right.
but the option is there. So that's the easiest explanation of term and whole life insurance.
So from an individual standpoint, because I know the phrase or the term equity is utilized a lot whenever you're buying
Right.
houses or investing. Life insurance can be utilized to build equity.
Correct.
However, it can't be term. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, term does not build cash value. Little inside, 2% of term life insurance policies will pay out.
Okay.
You're normally going to outlive that policy because it's used for a short time. Let's say you have children in school, you have a house note, after 30 years, the kid's out of school, the house is paid for, you don't need that huge policy anymore. So it's short, it's terminating, so that's how it usually works with the term life.
Okay. Now, I've also had instances where I've discussed insurance with people. Of course, I don't sell insurance, but I have had discussions. As an attorney, you'll be surprised some of the discussions I have with people.
I can imagine.
But with that insurance, not just car insurance, but life insurance is a discussion that I have as well. And with that, they always mention the, I guess, desire to not have to go through a rigorous physical in order to receive insurance. What exactly do they mean by that?
We have what's called fully underwritten life insurance and simple issue life insurance. Fully underwritten is the traditional old school way of doing it, where you will go see a physician or a paramedic will come to your house. They will take your measurements, weigh you, be a blood and urine that they will collect, and they're using information to determine if you're healthy enough to get life insurance and determine what your rating will be. That still happens today. But we also have what's called simplified issue life insurance, which is just based off answering health questions. They're going to check your prescriptions. They may do a small doctor's statement from your physician, but usually these type of policies will issue out in maybe 24 to 48 hours, depending on how healthy you are when you do it.
Okay. And before we got started, you and I were having a general conversation about that aspect of the insurance process, the physical aspect. And I believe you stated something that is, I can verify as being true, that oftentimes some people, when they're subjected to the physical, they go in thinking that they're healthy and there should be no issue with the issuance of this policy. But we've seen instances where other things happen.
It is eye-opening for a lot of people because they haven't had a full physical maybe since high school,
Correct.
depending on what their profession is. And I'm talking to my friends in the industry. We've had people who had cancer diagnosis. Even had one person one of my agent friends had to let a client know that they had HIV.
Oh.
So that's just how intrusive and deep they go with the physical, but it will save your life in some cases.
Correct. And at the same time, we have to understand that insurance is a business.
Yes.
And the insurer doesn't want to, of course, issue out a six-figure policy to a person who they know going in has some type of debilitating disease that eventually is going to result in their early demise.
Absolutely.
Okay. So with all of that being the case, then, are there instances where a person having some type of debilitating disease can still get life insurance?
They can. It really depends on what the health issue is. Each insurance company is different. Their underwriting, which is what their guidelines are to give you a policy, varies. But long as you are regularly seeing a physician, you're keeping up with your checkups, and you're on the medication, that is a good indicator to the underwriter that you're a good risk candidate to take on. But if you don't go to your doctor, it's been 2 years, and you have this health issue, they're probably going to tell you no.
And what about individuals who have mental health issues?
Again, that's a case-to-case basis. Sometimes if you're taking multiple medications for that issue, they may decline you. But I have companies that will give a policy if you have schizophrenia, or maybe you take some type of medication for anxiety. It just depends on the nature of the medication and why you're taking it.
Okay. Well, this insurance information is fascinating. We're definitely going to go further in depth with this. Please make sure that you come back and join us as we do that. Welcome back. So we're talking insurance, and we were talking about term and whole life insurance policies. Now I want to transition into something else. I heard something about this thing called burial insurance. What exactly is burial insurance?
All right, burial insurance is what our grandparents always talked about, and we probably seen the guy come to the house to pay the money, to collect the money. Burial life insurance is a whole life insurance policy. Most specifically, these are policies that are small value. They're not going to make you rich, not going to give $1 million, but these are policies between $2,000 to $50,000. They're primarily used for burial expenses, pay for the arrangements. You can also pay off small bills. Maybe you want to leave a little lump sum to your spouse or to the grandkids, or maybe to a charitable organization. But these are small face policies that are whole life insurance policies.
And what is the benefit of a burial insurance policy?
The biggest benefit is that you're not going to be a burden and put a financial strain on your family once you're not here. These policies will not pay off a house, but let's say your average funeral is between $8,000 to $10,000. A $10,000 policy will either pay off the whole funeral expenses or at least defray some of the costs associated with it.
Okay. Well, I know I've seen instances where a lot of people have not been able to bury their loved ones for lack of money. And of course they do the standard selling dinner plates or GoFundMe pages. Would you say, being a professional in this field, would you say that these people need to just sacrifice, put the money aside, and get some form of burial insurance?
Absolutely. Your normal burial policy for $10,000 may be anywhere from $20 to $30 a month, depending on the age.
That's not bad.
Very inexpensive. You lock in that price for 10, 20 years, however long the person lives. But these policies are very inexpensive, and take off from buying a pizza once a month, and you pay for your policy.
Oh, it makes a whole lot of sense. I like that analogy. That was very good. Now let me ask you this. We have a lot of people in this state who get married. get married very young.
Right.
And with that, I'm sure they do it with eyes on having kids.
Exactly.
What is your position with respect to newlyweds who find themselves in the family way and insuring those babies?
Number one, if you have young children, I'm a proponent of getting insurance on young children because children can develop childhood health conditions that will make it harder for them to get insurance as they get older. So you're not buying insurance because you're afraid your child would die. You're insuring their insurability as they get older.
That makes a lot of sense. And with that, let's say husband and wife A has a child and they put insurance on that child. Is there a way that that policy with that child can maybe transfer over to that child taking it on at some point in time?
That is the goal for a lot of the policies. One of the goals is I have one company I use that you can buy a child policy and you make the payments. Then once the child turns 18, the child can take over the policy and they can keep it as long as they live. That's something, let's just say they get diagnosed with diabetes at a young age.
Okay.
Makes it hard for them as an adult to get life insurance. But if they have that child policy from the childhood, just keep making the payments and you at least have that in your back pocket.
Gotcha. Makes a whole lot of sense. People out there looking, definitely listen to what this man is saying. The insurability of a child as they grow older into adult is very, very important. And if you can get them put into the system from an insurance standpoint early on, to where as they get older, they don't have to worry about taking what we talked about earlier, all of these physicals and blood tests, that'll be very beneficial to them because their cost of insurance, and correct me if I'm wrong, their cost of insurance will be decreased then.
I have an example. I have a client right now. This person was diagnosed with diabetes as a child.
Okay.
And I'm trying to get them insurance now, but because of the diagnosis, it's going to make them, they have to be a little bit older before the company will even take a look at them.
Gotcha.
But had they had a child policy, that would have covered them till they become age where I can find a company that will deal with the childhood diabetes.
Okay, wow. Definitely look at that, everyone. Now, transitioning a little bit, let's say you have a situation where you have husband and wife. Let's say they're not in the family way, they don't have kids.
Okay.
However, let's say husband's mother comes to live with the couple.
Okay.
Is there any way that husband and wife can get a policy on the mother while she's living with them?
Absolutely. We got something called an insurable interest. And that being your mother-in-law, her mother, you both have an insurable interest in her life. And her staying with you, you are providing some of her needs. So it's easy to get a policy for your mother-in-law. Usually in them cases, the children will be the payer and the owner of the policy because that allows you to make changes, make sure everything is up to date with the policy. But I do that fairly often.
Okay. Now, from the standpoint of insurance, of course, you're insured with life insurance so that something will be there once your demise comes, whether you utilize it for burial or it's something that can be handed down to your descendants. My question to you is, and working in the legal field, I know the answer, but for the people out there, does that insurance policy, once that person passes, do we have to send that policy through probate?
No, 90% of the time, no. The only case that I could find where that may be issue is if the beneficiaries died before the insured.
Absolutely.
If that happens, then that check is going to go to the probate court, and after that, it's going to be the judge going to decide who gets the money. So I'm glad you asked that question because it's always good if you have a agent is to give it to that agent at least once a year to go over the beneficiary form, make certain that you still want that person to be the beneficiary. If that person has passed away, please change the beneficiary because if they don't, the situation you just explained will be a reality for them.
And even in that discussion, you should definitely go over your beneficiary information if you're in the process of going through a divorce.
Oh my God, yes. That's because the insurance company, they're going to pay the check to whoever the beneficiary is. They don't care who the name, as long as that name fits what's on the form. So if it's somebody you do not like, you cannot stop the insurance company from giving that money to that ex-wife, ex-husband. It's a legal document.
All because you failed to change your beneficiary.
Happens every day.
Every day. Now, we were talking a little bit before we came back from break about insurable interest, and let's say I have an LLC, and let's say under that LLC I have 3 important employees who generate substantial revenue for me. Mm-hmm. Under my business, can I insure the lives of those employees who generate income for me?
You can. Caution, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, but there are some things such as key man insurance. And this is where the company will buy insurance policy on a key employee. So if the employee passes away, then the revenue lost can be gained back with the company until they find somebody to replace him. But that is very common in business practice to get a key man policy.
Okay. Well, we have still quite a bit of time here. Why don't you just take the floor and go over whatever topic that you want to go over? And I'm doing that because insurance is something that I feel, especially in the Black community, mm-hmm. is something that we need to have a conversation about.
Absolutely.
I know from looking at it from my side, doing the successions that I've done, there's been an absence of insurance. And mm-hmm. I advocate all the time within our community that we must insure our people. I'm going to give you the floor and talk a little bit about the benefits of the insurance and how the cost does not overwhelm the actual benefit.
Absolutely. Life insurance is the biggest risk management tool because you're managing risk. The first risk is you're going to die too young. If you die too young, that means you may leave a wife, a husband, children, a mortgage, so that insurance will take care of those costs. You may get hurt and get paralyzed, or you may have to take early retirement. Insurance will pay you because you've been paying on the policy. So you're taking the risk of you getting hurt and can't work. And finally, the risk of dying without money in the bank. So the insurance policy will be used to pay for your burial expenses. Also, if you are a husband and wife and both of you guys receive Social Security, one of the spouses, you're going to lose one of those Social Security checks. So that insurance will be a lump sum amount of money to help your spouse adjust to a new reality. Life insurance cost. The younger you are, the less expensive life insurance is. The older you get, the more health issues you have, the more it's going to cost. It's always good to lock in life insurance at a young age while you're still healthy. As you get older, you can still get life insurance, but the cost will be a little higher. For $1 a day. I know we say that all the time about for $1 a day, but it is true. $35 a month is a nice life insurance policy, and that's one tank of gas in this $2.50 environment we're staying in right now.
That is absolutely true. And one of the key things to piggyback on what you were saying, one of the key things that I always advocate for minorities to get insurance for is because, as some people say, we're playing the game of catch up. And in playing the game of catch up, a lot of people fail to realize that life insurance is one of the biggest generators of wealth that you can pass down to your next generations to help them to build themselves up to where they have the things that you wanted them to have, but maybe you couldn't get them. And so now they could take that life insurance proceed and they can go start a business.
That's
and
correct.
They can hand that business down to their next generations, but at the same time, accrue more life insurance that they can hand down to those generations. A lot of people have watched HGTV and they've seen people who are in their 20s going and getting a $1 million house. Well, 9 times out of 10, that's because they were left a sizable amount of life insurance that affords them that opportunity to go out and get that type of house.
Absolutely.
So if anyone needs life insurance, please be sure to contact Mr. Dixon. I'm sure you'll be very receptive.
Yes, sir.
And try to get your life insurance in order. As for me, I thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Legal. Until next time, you have a good one.